My mom threatened to jump off a building 3 times because of me. The first time was right after my SATs. My scores were good enough for the Ivy League, but she climbed up to a rooftop and wouldn't come down until I agreed to apply to a local school. I caved, ended up at some random state college. The second time was after graduation. I landed a job in New York, but she showed up on top of my office building and made me quit. So I moved back home, got a job pumping gas for $3,000 a month. The third time, she was up on another rooftop forcing me to marry someone I'd met exactly once. A woman she approved of. I did what she wanted. After the wedding, that woman cheated on me and cleaned out my bank account. I finally snapped. I jumped off a building myself. When I opened my eyes, I was back to the day my mom first pulled the rooftop stunt. If you apply to any school out of state, I'm jumping. She was already up on the ledge. I looked at her, then I turned and walked away. Go ahead. Don't waste my time. Her face froze. That look's shock mixed with rage brought it all back. In my past life, after my wife took everything and I found out about the affair, the first thing my mom said was, "That's what you get for not listening to me. You can't even keep a woman in line." Sympathetic. That's when it hit me. All those years of giving in had destroyed my entire life. What did you just say? Her voice shook. I headed for the stairs. I said, "If you're going to jump, hurry up. I've got applications to submit, Julian." Her voice went shrill. "Get back here, you ungrateful brat. You want me dead?" I stopped and looked back. "Mom, you're the one who climbed up here to threaten suicide. That's on you, not me." I walked down the stairs without looking back at home. I locked myself in the study and pulled up the application portal. My hands were shaking. This time I wasn't settling for some mediocre school. From memory, I typed in every Ivy League school I dreamed about for 3 years. When I hit submit, my eyes burned. I almost cried. This was the first time I'd ever made a choice for myself. I just logged out when the door flew open. My mom stood there, eyes red and puffy. Hair a mess. She must have sprinted down. She was still breathing hard. "You?" I gasped, her eyes landing on my computer screen. "Did you submit it?" I nodded and closed my laptop. "Let me see." She lunged for the computer. I blocked her. "Mom, it is done," I said. "Let me see." Her voice cracked, losing control when I didn't budge. She slammed the power button. The screen lit up. "Password protected." Glared at me. "What's the password?" "I'm not telling you. It's already submitted. Can't change it." "Where did you apply?" Her voice was shaking now. "Out of state?" "Is it out of state?" I said nothing. That was answer enough. She screamed, grabbed my keyboard and smashed it on the floor. Plastic shattered everywhere. Keys flew into the corner. "Julian, are you trying to kill me?" She was sobbing, now tears streaming down her face. "I told you to apply locally. Do you not understand English? I raised you by myself. Do you know how hard that was? Now you're grown up and you want to fly away. First it's college, then a job, then a wife. All out of state. You'll forget all about me just like your father. You both want to abandon me." She collapsed on the floor, hitting the ground, wailing. This scene had played out 100 times in my past life. Anytime I showed a hint of resistance, she'd cry about how hard her life was, how ungrateful I was. I used to believe I was wrong, that I'd failed her until I jumped off that building. "Mom," I cut in. "I never said I wouldn't take care of you." She looked up, tears streaked like she was grabbing at a lifeline. "Then change your application. You still have 3 days. Can still change at a local school, would be perfect. I could see you all the time." "I'm not changing it." My voice was quiet, but firm. "Don't try to control my college applications." She froze. She hadn't expected me to say no so directly. I grabbed my laptop, stepped around her, went to my room, and locked the door. I could hear her crying outside. Soon, she was on the phone, sobbing to relatives about what a nightmare I was. I didn't care. I changed my password. I leaned against the headboard and told myself, this time, I'm not ruining my life for anyone. Maybe the pain of dying in my past life was too real. I slept like the dead I dreamed of fragments from before. My hands cracking in the winter, cold at the gas station. The emptiness when I found out my wife had stolen everything and run off with another guy. My mom standing in my gutted apartment, saying, money is just money. Make more. Next time. I'll find you a better woman. I woke up in a cold sweat. Room was dark except for the computer screen. Glowing. I heard typing. Someone was at my desk trying to guess my password. I stirred. The light snapped on, blinding me before I could react. My mom threw the laptop onto my bed. Her face was gray with fury. She pointed at me. You changed the password. What's that supposed to mean? You're treating me like a thief. Anger flared up inside me. But when our eyes met, I just felt tired. I'd seen this coming for over 10 years. She'd walked into my room whenever she wanted, looked through my phone whenever she wanted. I even had to tell her my passwords. I sat up, pulled the laptop toward me, and kept my voice calm. I told you my college applications are my decision. This is my computer. You don't have the right to go through it. I'm your mother. What's yours that I can't see? Her face flushed, her voice shrill. Would I hurt you? I just want to see where you applied. I'm doing this for your own good. Why do you have to go so far away? Stay local after graduation. I'll get you a nice stable job. Isn't that better than being out there on your own? I'd heard this my whole life. In my past life, all that for your own good dragged me straight to hell. Enough. I wasn't loud, but she went quiet. I walked to the desk and picked up a fruit knife lying there. I wasn't pointing it at her, just holding it. Mom, you said if I don't apply locally, I'm killing you, but have you ever thought about me? She opened her mouth, nothing came out. My grades can get me into the best schools in this country, studying exactly what I want. But you're forcing me to stay here and go to some mediocre school I don't even respect, Mom. That's not looking out for me. That's ruining my life. If anyone's trying to kill someone here, you. The words hung in the air. Her face went blank. For the first time she actually saw me. For the first time she realized her obedient son was full of resentment. Then she exploded. I'm killing you, Julian. Where's your conscience? I fed you, clothed you. I sacrificed everything for you. And now you're saying I'm forcing you. Fine, I'll die right now. You'll be happy when I'm dead. She ran toward the balcony, dramatic as ever. But I knew she wasn't going to jump. This was just her go-to move to make me give in. When I didn't chase her, she cried louder. Soon there was banging on the wall. The neighbor across the way threw open their window. What is all the screaming in the middle of the night? Let people sleep. Keep it up. And I'm calling the cops. Her crying caught in her throat. She stood there at the balcony edge, stuck, her face cycling through red and white. Finally, she shot me a death glare, marched back to her room, and slammed the door. Peace at last, but I knew it wasn't over. The next morning she was gone. I didn't think much of it. I got ready and went out to look for a part-time job. College costs money. I had a scholarship, but I didn't want to depend on her for living expenses. More importantly, I needed to start building an escape plan. After running around all afternoon, I got home around 5:30. I walked to my room, grabbed the door knob, pushed it open. My computer was gone. Where's my laptop? Oh, that she put vegetables in a bowl. Sounding casual, I accidentally knocked over a glass of water and spilled it on the computer. Took it to a repair shop. The guy said he needs to look at it. Might take a few days. Something was off. I didn't argue. I went back to my room. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the application portal, typed in my password. Bright red text. Password incorrect. Please try again. I tried 3 more times. All wrong. My hands were shaking, barely keeping it together. I walked back out. I held my phone up to her face, fighting to stay calm. What's going on? What did you actually do with my computer today? He turned off the faucet, shook off the water, wiped her hands on her apron, and looked at me like she'd done nothing wrong. College applications are a big deal. I had to help you out. You're young. You don't get it. School rankings don't matter. What matters is the major. The job prospects today. I pulled some strings, spent $30,000, hired an expert to review your schools and pick your majors. All local. After graduation, you can be a high school teacher. Nice and stable. I already changed your application. You're all set. $30,000. She really went all out. I was so mad. My voice shook. Who gave you permission to change my application? Did I ask you to do that? Change it back right now. Tell me the password. She immediately went full drama mode, pointing at me. Tell you so you can change it back to those out-of-state schools. No way you change that application. You can forget. I'm your mother. I'll pretend I never had a son. He'd said that line a million times in my past life. Every time she said it, I'd cry beg. Given this time I looked at her, stared for a few seconds, then turned, yanked open the door, and ran out. Julian, where are you going? Get back here. Her shouting stayed behind me as the door shut. So I was out of the building. My phone rang. My mom's sister Martha. I hung up. It rang again. This time her brother Brandon Twitter was blowing up, too. Julian, how can you treat your mother this way? Raising you alone was so hard for her. I heard you want to go to college out of state. That's too far. Listen to your mom. Message after message, all telling me to be a good boy. Looking at that stuff, it was almost funny, but I knew I couldn't fight this head on. The application deadline was in 3 days. Even if I found a way to reset the password and change things back, my mom would just make more trouble. I sat in a park pavilion scrolling through Twitter, frustrated. Then I saw a post from a senior, a guy 1 year ahead of me, going off his computer programming competition trophy. That gave me an idea. Right after I messaged him, my phone rang again. Aunt Michelle. I answered. Julian, where are you? Michelle sounded panicked. Get to the hospital. Your mom collapsed. The smell of the municipal hospital was exactly as I remembered it from my past life. A cloying mixture of industrial pine floor cleaner, sour vegetable broth, and the faint, dry sting of rubbing alcohol. I stood in the corridor of the third-floor emergency ward, my hands buried deep in the pockets of my hoodie. My fingers were wrapped around a second-hand burner phone I had purchased with $30 of cash from a convenience store 10 minutes ago. Julian, over here. Aunt Michelle's voice was a high, thin screech that made several nurses at the reception desk look up with practiced, tired frowns. She was standing outside room 302, her floral scarf slightly askew, her face flushed with a righteous, dramatic grief. Behind her stood Uncle Brandon, his arms crossed over his leather jacket, his eyes locked onto me with the cold disappointment of a man who had been dragged away from his weekend football broadcast. How could you? Michelle gasped as I reached the door frame. She grabbed my arm, her long, manicured nails digging through the fleece of my sleeve. Your mother has high blood pressure, Julian. You know how fragile her heart is. The doctor said if she had arrived 10 minutes later, she could have had a stroke. All because you want to run away to some fancy school in the East. I didn't flinch. I slowly peeled her fingers off my arm, my movement so calm and deliberate that she took a half step back, her mouth slightly open in surprise. Where is the attending physician? I asked. My voice was quiet, devoid of the shaking panic I had carried during the first life, when I had knelt by her, gurney in tears, promising to go to the local normal college if she would only open her eyes. The doctor is in the office, Brandon grunted, stepping forward to loom over me. But that doesn't matter, Julian. What matters is your attitude. Your mother has sacrificed her entire youth for you. She didn't remarry, she didn't buy new clothes, she spent every penny on your tutoring. And now you're treating her like an enemy? You're acting like a criminal. I am going to speak with the doctor, I said, walking past his shoulder. Julian, get back here. Michelle hissed. She's in the room. She's awake. She's been calling your name. I ignored her. I walked down the corridor to the consultation office. The door was half open, and a young resident with deep circles under his eyes was typing on a terminal. Excuse me, I said, knocking on the glass. I am Eleanor Vance's son. I want to know her clinical parameters. The resident looked up, his fingers pausing on the keys. He scanned my face, then pulled up her file on the screen. Eleanor Vance, he read, his voice carrying the dry, flat neutrality of someone who had seen 50 histrionic patients today. Her blood pressure upon admission was 145/90, slightly elevated, likely due to acute emotional stress or physical exertion. We ran an EKG and a cardiac enzyme panel. Everything is completely normal. No signs of ischemia or arrhythmia. We've given her a mild saline drip and 20 milligrams of lisinopril. She is cleared for discharge. A saline drip, I repeated. Yes, the doctor said, not looking up as he went back to typing. Essentially, she needs to rest and avoid unnecessary arguments. But there is no organic pathology. I let out a soft, silent breath. Saline. In the first life, my mother had spent 3 days in this ward, her bed, surrounded by crying relatives who looked at me as if I were a murderer. She had laid there with an oxygen mask over her face, whispering that she didn't have much time left until I signed the local college enrollment form right in front of her. It had all been a performance. A $30,000 hack on my computer, followed by a $100 saline drip to seal the cage. "Thank you, doctor," I said. I walked back to room 302. When I pushed the door open, the room was quiet. My mother lay on the narrow bed, her hair neatly spread across the white pillow, her face pale, and 4-line was taped to the back of her left hand, running up to a plastic bag of clear liquid hanging from a metal pole. When she saw me, her eyelashes fluttered, and she let out a low, dry groan, her head turning slowly to the side. "Julian," she whispered, her voice sounding thin and dry as paper. You, King." Aunt Michelle and Uncle Brandon filed into the room behind me, forming a silent, judgmental wall at the foot of the bed. "Mom," I said, standing 3 feet from the gurney. I didn't reach for her hand. I kept my hands in my pockets, my eyes resting on the clear plastic line of her saline drip. "The doctor says your cardiac panels are entirely clear. Your blood pressure is normal. He's writing the discharge papers now." My mother's face went stiff for a fraction of a second, her lips tightening into a thin line before she quickly recovered, her eyes filling with instant, wet tears. "The doctor, he doesn't understand," she sobbed, her hand reaching out toward me, her fingers trembling. "My chest, it feels like there's a heavy stone sitting on it, Julian. I can't breathe. Every time I think about you leaving, about you being 3,000 miles away in the cold, my heart just stops. Julian, please. Just stay. If you stay, I'll get better. I promise." "The application portal closes in 48 hours, Mom," I said, my voice carrying the flat, level rhythm of a logistics report. "Julian," Aunt Michelle gasped, slapping her hand against the metal rail of the bed. "How can you talk about applications at a time like this? Your mother is lying in a hospital bed." "She's lying in a hospital bed because she wants to hide the fact that she spent $30,000 of her savings to hack my computer and change my future," I said, my voice rising slightly, just enough to cut through her screech. The room went dead silent. My mother's hand stopped trembling. She stared at me, her eyes wide, the sallow, helpless look on her face instantly evaporating into a hard, defensive glare. What did you say?" she whispered. "The repair shop downtown," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "I called them while I was in the cab. They said they never received a water-damaged laptop from Eleanor Vance today, but they did receive a $30,000 bank transfer from your joint savings account to an IT consulting firm, registered to a man named Gerald Cox, a firm that specializes in database extraction and credential bypass." I stepped closer to the bed, looking down at her. "You didn't spill water on my computer, Mom," I said. "You gave it to a professional hacker to reset my portal login. You changed my Ivy League choices to the state normal college because you want me to be a local high school teacher under your thumb for the rest of my life." "Julian," Eleanor shrieked, her voice losing all its thin, sickly quality as she shot upright in the bed, the 4-line tensing against her skin. "I did it for your own good. You're young. You don't know how dangerous the world is. You think those out-of-state schools care about you? They'll use you and spit you out. I'm the only one who truly loves you. You don't love me, Mom," I said, my voice dropping back to that quiet, freezing register. "You just want a doll that doesn't walk away." I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. "Julian, get back here," Eleanor screamed, the plastic saline bag rattling on its pole as she tried to scramble out of the bed. "If you walk out of this door, I'm jumping. I'm going straight to the roof of this hospital, and I'm jumping. Do you hear me? I'll die because of you." I stopped at the threshold. I didn't look back at her. I looked at Aunt Michelle and Uncle Brandon, who were staring at me in pure, unadulterated horror. "Aunt Michelle," I said. "You heard her. She's threatening suicide again. Under state civil code, an active suicide threat in a medical facility requires an immediate 72-hour involuntary psychiatric hold. Please notify the floor nurse. If you don't, I will." I pushed the door open and walked out into the damp, cold corridor, leaving her screams to echo off the tiled walls behind me. The rain had returned by the time I reached the park pavilion. The wind through the dry maple trees was loud, blowing the gray mist under the wooden roof of the structure. I sat on the damp bench, my laptop, the old, second-hand one I had kept in my locker at school, resting on my knees. Beside me sat Leo. He was 19, a sophomore at the Regional Tech Institute, wearing a faded black hoodie with a programming competition logo on the chest. He had a can of cheap energy drink in his hand, his eyes locked onto my screen as his fingers flew across his own keyboard. "She used a basic phishing redirect," Leo muttered, his tongue clicking against his teeth as he analyzed the login logs. "Your expert Gerald Cox is a joke. Julian. He didn't hack the state registry. He just installed a remote access Trojan on your main laptop when your mom brought it to his shop, captured your browser cookies, and used them to log into your portal session from his own IP. Can you bypass it? I asked. Bypass it. Leo let out a short, dry laugh. The state admissions portal uses a legacy security protocol from 2012. It's practically a paper screen. I've already isolated the session cookie he used and flagged his IP to the server as a suspicious brute force attack. His access is locked. He tapped a key with a sharp, final click. Now, Leo said, turning his laptop toward me. The portal is open. I've reset your security questions. The new recovery questions aren't things like, what is your mother's maiden name? Or, what was your first pet's name? Your mom knows. All that garbage. What are they? They're encrypted alphanumeric strings based on your high school student ID and a secondary key I set up on this burner phone, he said, handing me a small plastic device. Every time someone tries to log in, this phone gets a 6-digit verification code. If they don't have this code, the portal locks down for 24 hours. You have 36 hours before the final deadline. I looked at the screen. The application interface was clean, the white input boxes waiting for my input. I didn't hesitate. I typed in the names of the 3 Ivy League schools I had dreamed about during my cold winter nights at the gas station. I entered my AP Calculus scores, my chemistry research abstract, and my personal statement, the one I had rewritten 3 times in my past life before my mother threw it in the trash. When I hit confirm, my eyes burned, a hot, heavy tear sliding down my cheek, but my hand was completely steady. Submission successful. Candidate, Julian Vance. First choice, Princeton University, Department of Physics. Status, locked. There, Leo said, leaning back into the wooden bench, his eyes reflecting the blue light of his screen. It's locked. Even if your mom hires the entire computer science department from the State Institute, they can't change it without this burner phone. Thank you, Leo, I said, reaching into my backpack to pull out my savings envelope, $3,000 of cash I had saved from my part-time tutoring jobs. Leo waved his hand dismissively. Keep the cash, Julian. My dad was just like your mom. He wanted me to go into accounting so I could manage his tax firm. The day I got my scholarship to the Tech Institute, he threw my monitors out of the window. Watching these control-freak parents choke on their own medicine is payment enough. He stood up, pulled his hood over his head, and stepped out into the rain. Good luck, Julian, he called back. And make sure you keep that burner phone in your pocket. The next morning, the sun was pale and gray, struggle-ing through the heavy clouds. I walked into the Oak Ridge Legal Aid Clinic downtown. The office was small, decorated in cheap wood panels and faded gray carpet, smelling of wet wool and old paper. A young woman with her hair tied back in a neat bun, named Sarah Jenkins, was sitting behind the desk, reviewing a stack of tenant disputes. Julian Vance? She asked, looking up as I walked in. Marcus said you called last night. Yes, I said, sitting in the plastic chair opposite her. I want to file a petition for temporary legal emancipation and a domestic protection order. Sarah's brow furrowed slightly as she scanned my file. Julian, you're 18. Under state law, you are legally an adult. You don't need an emancipation order to choose your college or move out of state. I know, I said, leaning forward. But my mother has a history of using fate, medical emergencies, and physical suicide threats to enforce codependency. He has already siphoned $30,000 from our joint educational trust to fund a database intrusion on my personal accounts. If I leave for Princeton in the fall, she will use her parental status to file an academic deferral or attempt to have me committed under a dependency claim. I pulled a small black voice recorder from my backpack and laid it on her desk. Inside are 48 hours of recordings, I said, including her threat to jump from the 3rd floor emergency balcony of the municipal hospital yesterday afternoon, witnessed by Aunt Michelle and Uncle Brandon. I also have the banking records showing the transfer to Gerald Cox for the portal hack. Sarah Jenkins picked up the recorder. She didn't speak, she simply plugged the device into her computer, put on her headphones, and listened. As the minutes passed, her expression went from professional neutrality to a deep, sallow disgust. She looked up at me, her eyes locked onto my face. She's been doing this since you were in middle school? She asked softly. Since I was 12, I said. In the past, I thought it was my fault. I thought because she was alone, I had an obligation to stay small so she wouldn't have to look up. It's not your fault, Julian, Sarah said, her voice dropping into a register. That made my chest tighten. This isn't parenting. This is coercive control. It's a domestic felony under the new state statutes. She pulled a blue folder from her drawer and began typing on her terminal. We're not just filing a protection order, Sarah said, her pen clicking as she signed the draft. We're filing a petition for the immediate separation of the educational trust. Since she siphoned the $30,000 for non-educational, illegal activities, we can legally petition the court to freeze her personal assets until the funds are returned to your custody. And the protective order? It will include a permanent distance restriction of 500 yards from your person, your academic institution, and your workplace. She looked at me, a sharp, unyielding resolve in her gray eyes. She won't be able to come to Princeton, Julian. If she steps one foot on that campus, the campus police will have her arrested before she can reach the gate. I looked at the blue folder on her desk. For 10 years, I had lived in a world where my mother's voice was the only law, where her tears were a sentence of death I had to execute upon my own dreams. But as I looked at the clinical, white sheets of the legal filing, I realized that the cage was not made of stone. It was just paper. And paper could be torn to pieces. The 3 months leading to the graduation were the quietest of my life. My mother did not return to our apartment after her discharge from the hospital. Under the terms of the temporary protective order, she was forced to stay with Aunt Michelle in the next town, her calls to my phone automatically blocked by Leo's script, her letters returned to sender by the post office. The apartment felt vast, empty, and completely quiet. I spent my evenings sitting in the study under the warm light of the desk lamp. My new laptop, which I had bought with my first paycheck from my part-time job at the university bookstore, displaying my freshman syllabus for the physics department. On a Friday afternoon in late June, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a notification from the Princeton Secure Admissions portal. I tapped the screen. Dear Julian Vance, we are pleased to inform you that the Office of Financial Aid has approved your petition for independent student status. Your full tuition merit scholarship, combined with the stipend from the Arthur Vance Research Fund, has been finalized. Your housing assignment for the fall term is room 402, Edwards Hall. We look forward to welcoming you to campus on September 3rd. I stared at the screen, a quiet, peaceful warmth spreading across my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't run to tell my relatives. I simply closed the lid of my laptop, stood up, and walked over to the full-length mirror in my room. The boy staring back at me was no longer the thin, gray-faced gas station worker of my past life. My skin looked healthy, my eyes bright, free of the permanent, suffocating exhaustion that had defined my youth. My suitcases were already packed, lined up near the door, 2 simple dark blue bags containing my books, my clothes, and my father's old sweaters. The doorbell rang. I walked to the entryway, checked the peephole, and opened the door. Aunt Michelle was standing on the landing, wearing a black wool coat, her face pale and splotchy. She didn't try to push her way inside. She stood on the threshold, her fingers clutching a white envelope. Julian, she said, her voice dropping to a low, dry whisper. Your mother sent this. The lawyer said she's not allowed to come within 500 yards of the building. She's staying in the car down the street. I didn't take the envelope. What is it, Aunt Michelle? It's her confession, Julian, Michelle sobbed, her eyes wet with tears. She signed the settlement papers. She agreed to return the $30,000 to your account. She only wants one thing. She wants to see you for 5 minutes before you leave. Just 5 minutes, Julian. She's your mother. She raised you. I have a flight in 2 hours, Michelle, I said, my voice carrying that same quiet, professional calm that had always been my anchor. Julian, please, Michelle cried, reaching out to grab my sleeve, but I gently stepped back, my hand resting on the edge of the door. She's sick. She's been crying for 3 weeks. She says if you leave like this, she'll die. She won't die, Michelle, I said, looking past her shoulder at the gray sky outside. She'll just find another doll. I slowly closed the heavy oak door of the apartment, the lock clicking shut with a cold, final sound that echoed through the quiet foyer. The train ride to New Jersey was long, but it was quiet. The morning sun was bright, breaking through the gray clouds of the horizon, casting a wide, golden path across the wet snow of the fields and the dark blue water of the distant river. I sat in my window seat, my laptop open on my knees, my fingers moving slowly across the keyboard as I drafted my first research proposal for the physics department. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was an email notification from Sarah Jenkins at the Legal Aid Clinic. Subject: Eleanor Vance Protective Order, finalized. I clicked the attachment. The court had approved the permanent injunction. The distance restriction was fixed at 1,000 yards, backed by a municipal warrant if violated. Eleanor Vance was officially off the register. She was no longer my guardian. She was simply a stranger, living in another town, entirely irrelevant to my life. I closed the laptop, put my phone on silent, and looked out the window. The station was empty as the train prepared for departure. But as I looked at the platform under the golden light of the morning, I realized my chest felt completely light, completely quiet, and finally beautifully free. I leaned my head back against the seat, my eyes drifting shut as the warmth of the sun touched my face, finally free of the cold, and stepping into the warm, endless dawn of my own life.